Fighter pilots deliver on strategy 98% of the time.
And we do that using the fighter pilot mindset. How we perceive the world, what we believe in, and how it drives phenomenal performance at an individual level, but also as a team.
Hey everybody, I'm Travis Bandit Keenan.
I'm Dwayne Spike Booker.
My name is Bobby Flash Dorenboss.
My name is Boo. And we're the team from Afterburner, and we've had the privilege of working with over 3,500 organisations and over 2 million people around the world.
Do we have any New York Giants supporters in the room? Yeah, we helped those guys win the Super Bowl.
What have you got in common with fighter pilots? Yeah, I get it. You're not going to pull 9G. But if you want things, if you need to achieve things, you have a lot in common with the average fighter pilot.
Imagine if you took the secrets of being able to make decisions at 1,400 miles per hour and translate them into your world. Because I assure you, having done it myself for 20 years now, you will always be ahead of the game.
Who would like to go flying in one of our high performance jets today? Yeah, we're not going to do that.
So how do you and I execute flawlessly in a rapidly changing and challenging environment? We use a tool or a process called flawless execution.
Flawless execution.
Flawless execution.
Flawless execution's accepting the fact we're not perfect, we make mistakes, but it's not an excuse. Improving the way I do business, my team does business, and how we support the entire organisation in achieving their business goals.
What's important as a franchise leader is that you create the actions and the outcomes that your team need to focus on. We say lose sight, lose the fight. That's why we have to execute everything flawlessly. You cannot execute flawlessly if you don't have the right mindset and you don't create clarity. It's that simple.
If you were to ask me to rate this experience on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give you 100.
I found myself immediately leaning forward and engaged with the material they were talking about.
Having these discussions about mindset shifting is critical.
And the ability to take that knowledge that you learned and transfer it into the business world, that's a rare skill.
We have to hit the science of execution. A very simple plan, well communicated through a brief, executed with focus, most importantly, debriefed.
The debrief is the most important part of the process.
In our line of work, we cannot make the same mistakes tomorrow that we made today.
We use a nameless, rankless debrief. The most senior member of our team and the most junior member of our team are equally heard.
Ask yourself a very simple question. Is what happened today what I expected? And if not, why? And what am I going to do about it tomorrow?
The exercise to get people to start thinking about how to build out a mission, it was very applicable. Culturally, that needs to be something ingrained in us, and this was a good start for that.
I think it can only make us better as a company, and I think that teams then debriefing together is only going to make us stronger.
Putting your ego aside, checking that ego, and being open to criticism and feedback.
Flawless execution, working together. I love the part about stripping ranks and titles and names. It's all about teamwork.
2 years ago, we worked with an organisation, and for 5 years in a row, they were losing 2.5% of their top line revenue. Within 6 weeks of running a debrief program across every store, their revenue bumped positive for the first time in 5 years. If you have an expectation that you need to meet and you want to do it better, faster, smarter, adopt that fighter pilot mindset. Is you don't need to be a fighter pilot to start thinking like one.
100% of fighter pilots have a very important meeting every single day. It's called a debrief. We hash out what went right, what went wrong. When we fail, we release a lot of toxic chemicals in our body that halve our brain power and halve the amount of energy we have inside of our body. If you take a negative experience and you come up with a positive action, something we can do the very next day, you immediately turn that chemical reaction around. We get in behind closed doors, hash out what went right, what went wrong, what we're going to do again, but we're definitely not going to do again. And the aim here is to take away 1, 2, maximum, a maximum of 3 what we call lessons learned. The best fighter pilots are the best at debriefing. Debriefing's so important. In our community, we say the debrief is more important than the mission itself.
It's the ability to say to ourselves, what are we trying to achieve here? What's happening now? Why are we not
where we want to be, but most importantly, what are we going to do tomorrow?
It was developed back in the 60s by fighter pilots. The reason was because we lost too many. In World War II, 49 airmen died every day in accidents, in training, before they went into combat.
During the jet era, it was the Cold War, and America was investing 4 times as much in their equipment as the Russians. High technology, cutting-edge equipment, cutting-edge apps. They had the technology edge, but in combat, they were only winning 2 to 1. You could not invest 4 times as much as your competitor, only get double the result, and be sustainable as a business. Neither could we.
Thousands of fighter pilots, one squadron was winning 14 to 1 in the Vietnam War. 14 to 1. 7 times better than everyone else. Same industry, same tools, same training, but somehow 14 to 1.
And when they had a deep dive and investigated what they did, what they discovered was after every mission, they sat down and looked at areas where they could improve tomorrow. That's when they built Top Gun. And at Top Gun, they educated fighter pilots on the skill of debriefing. It had nothing to do with the flying. Debriefing was transformational for the world of fighter pilots. It improved our performance over 400%. I made the mistake, I fess up, I fix it. These are the words and the culture and the ethos of a fighter squadron. And by taking that accountability, as I said, life gets easy, because all we've got to do is fix it. The culture's called nameless and rankless.
Nameless and rankless means if you make a mistake, there's no repercussion to your career. Nameless and rankless means if you're the boss or you're the newbie, everyone is equal in this room. And we only ask 3 questions.
What is the result relative to where I need to be? What's the reason I'm not getting to my destination? And what am I going to do today to get closer to my goal? And the minute you debrief and create that little bit of hope, that single task that you can do tomorrow, guess what? You feel great. You take a loss and turn it into a win. And when you have hope, dopamine gets released. And when dopamine gets released, we feel good and we get things done.
And when you've got everything done, how do you think your workload goes from there? When we stop working and dealing with the same problems, the same issues every single day, we resolve them, we commit week by week to deliver on them, absolutely like a dog on a bone, they start to go away and we start to get the time we need to work on our business, to think expansively, to focus on revenue, to focus on sales, to focus on the things that generate the cash flow that allow us to grow.
So think about that for a minute. In your mind and culturally, how important is it for all of you to sit down at the end of the day and reflect on how you went? Do you debrief that sales call where the answer is no? That tender response where the answer is again no? That operational inefficiency, those recurring errors, the things that seem to go wrong every single day, do you ever get to the bottom of it?
If you have repetitious issues inside your business, if you are in a rut, if you are stuck, if you're not innovating, if you fear that you're being made redundant, if you're fearing obsolescence, there's one way to get out of it, and that is through debriefing.
When's the last time you made a great decision? Or you're on the receiving end of one? What about a bad decision? How many regrets do you have in life that come about as a result of you making a bad decision? Decision making is fundamentally what makes us who we are each and every day. As Jeff Bezos says, we are what we choose to be. But do we really understand the process behind how we make decisions? We use phrases like analysis paralysis, where we look at data, we try and build a big picture of the situation that we're in, and then we make a decision. But the reality is we don't know what is going to happen next, because next hasn't happened yet. The simple case in point is an event like the COVID pandemic, where the 2020 strategies for most organisations was thrown into disarray. So let's unpack how we make a decision. Fundamentally, decision making is based on a feeling. It's how we perceive the world around us, what's happened, where we are today, and what's going to happen in the future. So 95% of our decisions are based on a perception of the world, not the reality. It's those perceptions that drive thoughts, and a perception might be a gut feel, a feeling of confusion, but it generally starts with the word, I feel something, I feel good, I feel angry. From there, the cogs kick over, our thinking brain kicks in, and the thinking brain is our transition from feelings to action in the context of this conversation. Our thoughts, though, project into the future. We project the likely effect of how I feel now. And again, remember, that's the future. It doesn't even exist yet. And no matter how much work we put in, no matter how hard we try or how much analysis we do, we will never truly understand what is going to happen tomorrow. If you've invested, be it as an organization or at a personal level, you'll be familiar with the product disclosure statement, and previous performance doesn't guarantee future performance. It's in every investment paper. It's the ultimate get out of jail free card for your investments performing poorly. As we move from the future, we start to make the decision itself. And that decision is going to result in some action. Now, the action is where we get a little bit nervous, the fear of what we do next, which is often why we find ourselves not making the decision. It's not actually analysis paralysis, it's fear of what happens next. The actions that we take, we can see, because that's the real world, deliver results. And those results are generally pretty hard coded inside an organization. It's the whole big data movement and the ability to measure everything that happens from the minute someone walks in the building in the morning and leaves in the afternoon or logs onto their computer at home. We pretty much measure everything. But a little bit like a car, if we measured everything that the car did rather than what's important to us, we wouldn't really understand what was going on. If we focused on what speed the wheels were spinning, the exact temperature of the motor, where would we find time to actually move the steering wheel and peg the right speed? These results then deliver an impact. It might be an impact on our team in terms of an emotional impact, but more measurable, it'll be an impact on the market. This decision may have been around a product launch, or it may be organising an event, or as we said earlier, an investment decision. But ultimately there's going to be the effect, and the effect will be a loss of money, a loss of profitability, disengagement from our people. There's a myriad, if not thousands, of impacts that your decisions make. And in traditional decision making, that impact is going to shape your perceptions. So if you made a decision one day and for whatever reason it was wet outside and it was raining, you went out for a coffee and you slipped, your decision about going out in the rain will forever be shaped by that experience. So you'll perceive an element of danger. Up until the point you slipped over, you were perfectly fine. But that's not logical. That perception is purely based on one anomalous event. So how do we break that cycle? How do we ensure that actions that deliver impacts that may or may not be recurring, how do we make sure that we make better decisions next time? Well, the key to that is changing our perceptions. And in our traditional thought models, where we don't actually have a step to do that, we just naturally move on. In the positive psychology movement, it'll just be think positive thoughts, change your perceptions by thinking positively. Unfortunately, we can't trick our brains, and the brain wants to see some positivity and some positive action and results as well. But we can manufacture an environment where we can shape our perceptions to be more positive. That is a habit and a culture that fighter pilots call debrief culture. And it's the 8th step in our decision-making loop, because this is where we spend the time to reflect purposefully and say to ourselves, hey, what did I perceive? What was it that I actually wanted to happen? What was my objective? What was the result? And we have thousands of those, remember? What was the reason why that result happened? What's the cause of this particular outcome? And most importantly, what action am I going to take? Because it's the small actions that we take to modify the impact tomorrow that has the byproduct of changing our perceptions. The way your decisions work is a loop. It's called the decision-making loop. If you are aware of that loop, you can make changes to it. If you're not, you are doomed to continually make decisions that elicit a fearful response, that deliver underconfidence in our abilities, and finally, from a leadership perspective, erode our credibility as a leader. As a leader, your credibility comes from making decisions It doesn't come from making the... Have you ever driven a rental car before? Or over a period of years driven many, many different vehicles? If you have a life on the road and you're regularly renting cars, you'll understand what it's like to hop into a vehicle for the first time and try and figure out how to start it. It may be a petrol engine or an EV. Either way, the time it takes to understand where the ignition is, how to put the vehicle in gear, how to connect your Bluetooth phone, and how to get the GPS to work is all time spent not getting to your destination, which is the purpose of the rental car in the first case. If you take that rental car now and you look at it in terms of the way you conduct meetings, we're effectively doing exactly the same thing. Meetings without structure are like hopping into a new rental car, where the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting, we're too busy wondering what's going on, what button is where, what are we about to talk about, and therefore our ability to get to the destination is inhibited. In some cases, particularly if it's a real left field rental car, we might actually be frustrated and annoyed and actually have our performance reduce and a negative impact on the rest of the team. This is the importance of cognitive models inside organizations. If we look at the way we execute strategy, it's pretty simple if we think about it. There's what we want, where we're going, or what we would call an objective, and what we do, an action. Across an enterprise, they're really big objectives with thousands of actions. At a team level, they're smaller objectives with a few actions. And as an individual, I would say it's 1 or 2 objectives, no more than 3, and a few actions. But it's all the same, what we want and what we do. Conversations around that, though, tend to be very complex. If we walk into a board level or a C-suite, we're highly reporting focused. If we work within a software development team, we're very action focused. But the way in which we have these conversations is different. The structure is different, the content is different, and obviously the people in the room are different. Now imagine if we just had one rental car, the same rental car everyone used, where everyone knows exactly how to open the door, where to put the key, how to turn it on, how to connect their Bluetooth system. They're in the vehicle and they're driving within 30 seconds to a minute. Flawless execution provides that cognitive framework to allow you to invest more time in execution and less time trying to figure out what does this button do. The plan, brief, execute, debrief cycle is a microcosm for how we conduct every meeting, every planning session, and our execution day to day, week to week, month to month. And if you sit back and think about it, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? When we talk about planning, what we're really saying is, hey, let's all get together in a room, explore the challenges and opportunities here, apply some actions from lessons we've learned before, and understand implicitly what each one of us is going to do over the next week, and then go out and do it. Now, as we execute each day, there's going to be various factors that change. Obviously, as we complete work and certain members of the team get ahead or fall behind, we're going to need to adjust it, and that's okay. That's what briefing's for. Briefing is to look at our plan and put it in the context of today, to create situational awareness, to map the big picture, the story, to the actions. As we execute, which is something that we love to do as humans, we're very good at being busy, but often what we're busy doing isn't the right thing. We're in the era of busyness. The plan anchors us. It provides focus. It allows us to put our energy into the right thing rather than everything. It also gives us permission to say no or to step back when something that impacts what we do each day is misaligned with where we're going. And often we can put that over to someone else in the organization where it's their job. The ability to stay focused on that plan is fundamental to success. But finally, the most powerful element of it, where we bring together today, tomorrow, and yesterday, is this fighter pilot debrief. The plan sets us up for success in a debrief. The more clear it is, the more achievable, and our ability to measure how we're going sets us up for a very logical conversation where we can set the emotion aside and give ourselves the opportunity to participate in a nameless and rankless fashion, or radically transparent fashion, to talk about how we're going. So we kick off with our objective. We then ask ourselves, well, what's the result? What's actually going on in the real world now? And the gap between our objective and our results is what we would call at Afterburner our execution gap. And that's a much better word and a much better way of explaining where we are today, rather than say, hey, we're failing and we're falling behind. Hey, we just got a gap in our execution. So the third step is, let's close it. Let's find out what's causing that gap and do a deep dive until we find one action related to one person where we can pull a lever and something can happen. Now, if we do this as a peer group with the whole team, the great news is as we pull the levers, as we look at different actions and their impact on the rest of the team, we can resolve it then and there. But the most important part of the debrief is not analysing the things that maybe aren't going great. It's to come up with some action. Let's do something about it right now or first thing tomorrow morning. And it's the actions that drive us forward. So what we start to create is, instead of looking at trying to achieve a strategy over a quarterly period or a week or a couple of days, we're able to break the action time frame down into fragments of time. So for example, if we were to execute in a week, we can debrief on a daily basis. And that connects our plan to reality. So flawless execution is a cognitive model. It's the Corolla of rental cars, if you like. It's simple to use. Everyone knows where the button is. They understand implicitly what their roles and responsibilities are. And we can just focus on getting the job done.